Hello and welcome to the Business of Betting podcast. Today I'm joined by Mark Thomas, the co-founder and CEO of Zen Sports. Mark, thank you very much for coming on. The Business of Betting podcast is proudly brought to you by the Betfair Hub from Betfair Australia. No matter where you are in the world, if you want expert articles from pro punters, from building automated models to betting psychology, check out the Betfair Hub. betfair.com.au/hub. Gamble responsibly. Today I'm joined by Mark Thomas, the co-founder and CEO of Zen Sports. Mark, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to be here.
So just give us some background about you and how things developed and evolved in your path towards Zen Sports.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting path. We originally started Zen Sports out back in February of 2017. We launched under a completely different premise than what we are today. We were actually a meetup recreational sports app helping connect people to meet up to play sports for money and for fun. And, we got some users, we got some people, using the product, and, things were going, I guess, kind of okay is probably the best way to describe it. But it was pretty clear that it was going to be very difficult to build a venture-backed business on just, people playing pool or tennis, with brackets and software. And so we, looked at the landscape in May of 2018. And the U.S., the Supreme Court struck down the federal ban on sports betting, PASPA, at the time. And it was pretty clear that the legalization of sports betting was going to take hold here in the U.S. and, of course, continue to proliferate outside the U.S. where it's been legal for quite some time. And so we kind of talked with each other, turned to my co-founder and said, hey, I think we should take the same peer-to-peer concept that we're using for rec sports and apply this to sports betting. To have peer-to-peer sports betting with no need for a bookmaker involved, and also to use cryptocurrencies and blockchain to streamline the entire process. Because, when you really boil things down to, what the pain points in the sports betting and gaming industry are, it really comes down to really kind of two things. One is just a general kind of malaise towards traditional bookmakers, and everything that comes with them. And then also the funding piece, right? So, using traditional fiat for gaming and gambling and betting products is generally difficult. Banks will often decline those transactions as a centralized institution. And even if they do approve them, they often come with high fees, long latency periods, and chargeback fraud. So we recognize that there'd be a better way to handle funding and the actual mechanics of the wagering. And so in addition to the peer-to-peer betting piece, we really wanted to take our passion for cryptocurrencies and blockchain and apply that as well. And so we kind of look at ourselves as both things, both a decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace for sports betting and also a fintech company. So I think it's pretty interesting, all the different pieces we touch, but they all fit in together really nicely.
Tell me a bit more about that meeting with your co-founder and some of those discussions around that time. Were you mapping out a grand vision? Was it, 50 states and US domination? Obviously putting aside all the potential obstacles that may exist today. What was that time like?
Well, I will never actually forget the conversation back in May of 2018. We're based here in the Bay Area in California, and I live in San Francisco, but we happened to be working in San Jose that day, and we were at a coffee shop in downtown San Jose, and I turned to my co-founder. We didn't have a lot of money left in the bank at this point, and I knew what we were doing was not working, and we had to do something better. And I turned to my co-founder and literally said, we need to do peer-to-peer sports betting using cryptocurrencies. And he just looks at me like, what? I mean, it was just like one of those kinds of, are you joking? Where did this come from? And really it came from because I just maybe about half an hour before that got the news that the Supreme Court had struck down PASPA. And I was about 6 months into my cryptocurrency day trading days. I started day trading cryptocurrency in December 2017. And I just knew there was a better application for crypto beyond just speculating and trading it. And I knew like this was going to take hold, like I said before, in the U.S. on the sports betting side. And I knew what we were doing wasn't working. So I said, look, dude, we got to change this. So he was super skeptical, but we were able to go out and quickly raise about $400,000 to basically test out this idea, this notion of it. And what it looked like in 2018 was, hey, let's get this product built, okay, and let's get this launched internationally first as a proving ground, and then we will go into the U.S. at some point later on. So even though the U.S. had just struck down PASPA, it still at that time was only New Jersey and Nevada that had it legalized. And obviously since that time, about 20 states have legalized it and more are set to come. But we weren't just like, okay, now we'll launch in the US. Like being a tech, entrepreneur and having worked in the tech industry for a long time, you got to have product market fit first, or you're just going to fall flat on your face. So we launched a very early MVP of the app in September 2018. And then we launched the full-blown version of it in March of 2019. And of course, I've continued to iterate it on it since then and just make it, super amazing, robust, and deep of functionality and easy to use. So launched March 2019 internationally. And as you probably saw the news in August, we signed a deal with Strategic Gaming Management to operate in Nevada. So we're going through the Nevada licensing process right now. Hope to have that done in the next 6 to 8 months. And then we'll be in Nevada, hopefully in the spring. And we are working on several other states in the meantime. So, it took us a little while to get here, but we also think that coincided nicely with the states as they were ramping things up and getting things legalized. And we wanted to make sure that our product was top notch and really, very scalable and very differentiated from what else is out there. And we're definitely at that place now. I mean, our product is ready to rock and roll and scale and grow and do all those good things. So very, very excited for our future. But that was kind of the path that we took to get to this point.
That seems like a pretty tight timeline. We were talking about before February 2017, then to May 14th, 2018, and then being able to go live. That seems like, at least getting an MVP and ready to go internationally. What was allowing you to move so quickly?
Well, great question. So just the fantastic team we had, and we did this all on 2 engineers. We've certainly hired more engineers since that time. But from 2017, early 2017 through, I would say, up until about a year ago, so October 2019, it was mostly just 2 engineers. So for about 2.5 years, it was just 2.5 engineers, one front end, one back end. And so we just worked our ass off. I mean, we just, worked 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week. Crank through things. And there's also something to be said for being small and nimble too. You generally don't have a lot of bureaucracy there, but we just, worked our ass off to get to this point. And, since that time, of course, we've raised some funding and hired a few more engineers, but we're still pretty small. The engineering team is about 4 full-time, 1 part-time right now. And so, we've just maximized resources. It's not my first startup, so I definitely, have a foothold on product management and what it takes to build a great product. So there's some of that too. But just, the amazing team that's been here with us since 2017. Can't say enough about them.
Tell me a bit more about just the average consumer and how they would or how they should think about Zen Sports. Obviously on a scale of those who are active on Augur or Wager or some of these platforms that are out there to, sportsbet.io or Nitrogen Sports for those, international, through to, Bet365 and DraftKings and FanDuel and Paddy Power, all the way to someone who's never placed a bet and wouldn't have a clue. Where do you see yourself fitting, or is that an evolution? And how do you think about, those types of businesses and where you want to see yourself?
Yeah, I lump our competitors into kind of 3 groups. You've got the, of course, offline brick and mortar sports books that theoretically we compete with, but for all intents and purposes, not really. That's still one competitor group that you can kind of say we semi-compete with them. Like, for example, I don't consider us competing with like Las Vegas casinos or sports books because people are going there for other reasons beyond just the sports betting. Even just other sports books that you might find. There's just people that, want an in-person experience for travel, leisure, whatever it might be. Then you have kind of the old school online internet bookmakers that you just mentioned. And, if you look at a few things there, one is they're traditional bookmakers. Kind of all some of the pain points that people experience with traditional bookmakers come into play there. And then secondly, from a technology perspective, we're probably a little biased, but we like to think that our tech is, really best in class and, really got the latest UX, UI design, all that kind of good stuff. And then thirdly, of course, on the cryptocurrency and blockchain side, they don't touch that at all for the most part. And then I'd say there's a third group of competitors, which are really kind of the newer, upcoming, but still, very, formidable companies like the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, that newer products haven't been around as long, but still been around for quite some time. So they have a great customer base, generally better tech. They do some kind of peer-to-peer things like daily fantasy sports with DraftKings, but still, when it comes down to the bookmaking or sports betting part, there's still a traditional bookmaker in that regard. So, and then I guess there's a fourth group, which is you kind of touched on a few of the I'd say traditional crypto projects like Augur and Wager and so forth, that they're true cryptocurrency projects. They're not really companies and products. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just simply mean that, they've created purely decentralized products that really don't have like any kind of front end to them except for what, somebody may have built open source. And they're truly 100% on the blockchain with no kind of centralized features. And my general take there is I don't think the world is quite ready for that extreme. Maybe eventually someday, but right now, the world kind of wants what I would consider to be semi-decentralized, which is what we are, where we have a front end interface that we've built that's really clean and simple for consumers to dive in and get using, but we've layered in the cryptocurrency and blockchain piece behind the scenes that streamline a lot of the pain points, but don't fully you got to jailbreak your phone kind of thing to to use the product. I mean, we have both a app in the App Store and for iOS, and we have a Android APK app that can be downloaded from our website. So I think there's a lot of benefits to the way that we're doing it, being semi-decentralized, getting kind of the best of both worlds that true traditional crypto projects can't do, and that traditional bookmakers can't do either.
Do you need to have a philosophy on bookmaking? Because, some of those businesses you've mentioned generally they might have different approaches, but given what you're doing, you may not necessarily need to be hard and fast on anything, but you've obviously watched the industry evolve here in the US over the last couple of years when it comes to expansion outside of Nevada and what's happening globally. Do you have a preference? And you mentioned before some day trading, so I'm guessing you might lean at least slightly towards the peer-to-peer trading model generally, but what about when it comes to betting on sports or for the average fans and consumers out there?
So that's, I think, kind of the other beauty of Zen Sports. So we have market makers in our product for sports betting, as well as we do some of our own market making as well, too. Now, we don't do bookmaking. We don't set odds. We don't do that. But we will add liquidity to ensure that there is enough liquidity out there. And that, I think, is important in any kind of marketplace model. You always want to make sure you have enough inventory, supply, et cetera. Otherwise, if you come to it, it's just going to be dearth of inventory, and then people are just going to leave, right? So I think the beauty of what we do is it's the best of both worlds. There's always plenty of inventory and liquidity for most any kind of bet that you'd want, just like you'd get with a bookmaker. At the same time, you can still create your own bets for if you don't see something that you like, or you want to create something kind of obscure, or just in general, you want to create your own bets with your own odds. And so I think giving people that flexibility and that choice is really critical, and as I think the future, because you definitely want to make sure, I mean, it's kind of the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of people are going to be takers. They're not going to create their own bets. And that's fine. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. But having that flexibility to allow people to do so is super attractive. I also think the fact that people feel like they're in a decentralized marketplace. So, for example, like makers of bets in our system submit their own results, and we have a full penalty and reward system in place to ensure that all parties in the marketplace act in good faith. Like the fact that that that's how it operates, and the fact that you can create your own bets, and the fact that you can streamline the funding piece and not have to deal with a centralized bank or institution telling you can or cannot do things. When you piece all of those things together, that becomes a really attractive product for consumers. And I believe that that's the future, like giving people choice while still giving them a legalized infrastructure and trustworthy infrastructure to do things. That's really the future. So it shouldn't be black or white or all or nothing, which is what I feel like most of our competitors are. It should be a gray or blended mix of options based on what each person's individual preferences are.
Can you talk a little more about the approach when it comes to crypto versus fiat, the benefits there? Obviously, anyone who's tried to deposit money in the US in the last 18 months will probably be able to tell you, but tell me your thoughts on that area specifically.
Yeah. So on the funding side of things, I kind of touched on that before, that there's just so many pain points when it comes to using fiat for just in general in life, forget gaming or whatnot. But specifically, or even more so with gaming, there's again, I'd say what, 40, 50% of banks will decline the transaction that you try to fund a gaming or betting account, or they'll severely limit it. Like, they'll put a cap of like 200 or 300 or $400 on it. So if you want to bet anything kind of reasonably meaningful, you can't. Even if they do approve the transaction, they're almost always going to charge hefty cash advance or other fees for the privilege of doing so. From an operator perspective, I mean, the settlement on those transactions is anywhere from 1 to 5 days. So you in turn can't give the customer access to their funds in the betting app right away. So if it's half an hour before tip off of the NBA finals and you want to place a bet and you don't have any money in your account, well, you're not going to get enough. You're not going to be able to get the account funded in time to place a bet. I mean, and that sucks. I mean, that should not be how it is. And then of course you got chargeback fraud. So customers that authorize transactions into these betting products and then go back to their bank or financial institution later on and commit chargeback fraud, say it wasn't them when it really was, and then the operator is stuck dealing with trying to submit a dispute to get those funds, and that can take anywhere from 30 to 60 days. And oftentimes the bank will side on the go on the side of the customer because again they don't want to be funding betting and gambling products. So crypto gets rid of all of that, right? So there's no middleman. So a decentralized network, of course, of funding. The fees are fractions of what it would cost to use credit cards or debit cards or ACH or even wire transfers. The settlement times are basically near instantaneous. And of course, there's no chargebacks. All the transactions are immutable. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. Now, I think that that crypto is actually going to start rapidly replacing even non-gaming payments. Because if you look at stable coins, Tether, DAI, etc., they have all the benefits of the US dollar without all the problems that I just mentioned, right? And so, I mean, for example, like we built APIs around our payments solutions, and I think that is a huge opportunity for enterprise customers, even beyond just gaming, to look at that too. And then the last thing I'll say is rewards. So we built our own sports token that is used for earning and redeeming rewards, and that just creates a more fun gamified experience for people as they can collect these tokens, and use them and redeem them for certain things or cash them out or whatever it might be. So I think when you look at the entire package of what crypto brings to the table in gaming, it's like nothing we've ever seen before, and I think the opportunity is huge.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's certainly some hurdles that exist. Even with your coin, is your token a security, or are you going down the utility path?
So we have both a security token and we have a utility token. So our security token is truly just for investors that can be used, to obviously raise funding or whatever we might want to use that for on the investor side. And then and that was created back in December of 2018. And then our utility token, Sports, is a true utility token, and we have taken great pains to ensure that we keep our utility token status.
Imagine, yeah.
So we have never sold our utility token to investors. We've only sold it or given it to customers. We have a 20-page legal opinion that it's a true utility token. We never, even though the price can fluctuate, we never talk about price. We don't talk about ever, buy this token now and get returns. Nothing like that. In fact, we even go so far as if we see that kind of discussion happening, like in our Telegram or Discord channels, we warn people and then we ban them. And of course we delete that because we are not we've taken, like I said a minute ago, great pains to make sure sports utility token is truly utility token, and we want to make sure that others recognize that as well too. And at the same time, what's really cool is that we are starting to talk to other partners in the gaming and entertainment and even media and telecom industries about implementing our token into their rewards program. So we do want to expand the network and ecosystem for utility tokens so it can be used in even more places, but it is not a security, and people should never, take hold of it with the notion that they're going to generate returns on it.
So does that mean you'll be on third-party exchanges then, so people can use it more broadly?
It is. So currently we're listed on P2P B2B, which is an exchange out of Europe. We're looking at a couple of additional exchanges as well too. And we actually built our own exchange within Zen Sports and launched that back in early February of this year. So you can actually buy, sell, and trade sports tokens directly within Zen Sports. So for those that just want to do everything all in one place, we offer that. And for those that aren't using Zen Sports for betting or wagering, if you want to trade it third party, you can do so.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your Nevada experience so far? And I guess through the lens of how are you being treated as a crypto forward, let's say, platform versus how you would like to be treated? Is there a divide there? Are you still seen as, oh, this new fancy fandangled decentralized blockchain thing that we don't know about? Or is it starting to become more of a normal thing? Because I'm sure many people have thought it would be a great idea to have an alternative to typical fiat sports betting experience against a bookmaker. And I think we're trending in that direction in the US specifically, but you're actually doing it. So tell us about that experience and what you can share with the audience.
So we just started the application process with the Nevada Gaming Control Board a couple weeks ago. In fact, we're actually just submitting our application, should be going in this week. It took about 2 to 3 weeks to get all the documents prepared. We've got an amazing legal team and law firm in Nevada that is handling that. Just to put this out there, my particular application, the first part of it, as a key stakeholder in the company, was 74 pages long. Asking basically everything I've ever done for the last 20 years. So this process, and this is just the beginning. So this process is not for the faint at heart. They're definitely going to be prying into anything and everything that we've ever done as a company and anything and everything that I've ever done as an individual. Same thing for our other key stakeholders in the company. And so it is a very, very lengthy and difficult process. It's going to take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. But that's the bad news. The good news is once we have that, we're golden, right? And honestly, Nevada is really looked at actually as the gold standard for the licensing process. And so for the other 20 or so states that have legalized sports betting, they're going to look at the fact that we have a Nevada license and go, wow, okay, these guys, we need to take them seriously. And we actually are pretty hopeful we'll be able to piggyback off a lot of the application parts from the Nevada and use that for other states that we go into, because a lot of other states do look to Nevada simply because the licensing process is so rigorous. In terms of how are they going to look at us, doing peer-to-peer and cryptocurrency, good question. So peer-to-peer is actually legal in Nevada. So I don't foresee any issues with getting the peer-to-peer tech piece approved. The one key thing there that they require is to have an operator on the hook in case there's any mishaps or anything that goes wrong, which is totally fine. We already have all that infrastructure built out because we escrow funds whenever you create a bet or whenever you accept a bet. And we already have the dispute system in place if there's ever an issue that comes up in our app. So there's not going to be, there's nothing new there that we need to worry about in terms of if we need to quote unquote be on the hook for it, that's fine. I mean, we already do that. On the cryptocurrency side, so cryptocurrency wagering is not currently legal in Nevada. We are going to, of course, try to get an exception for what we're doing and to show them that there is a lot of benefits for consumers and, of course, for operators to be able to do that. It is a bit unknown if they will approve that or not. We do accept fiat, so as well. It is just a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what we do. Like less than 1% of the funding is done via fiat in our app. But if we need to only have that, we will do so to get started. And then we hope over time that we can, convince them to allow us to use the cryptocurrency piece. But it's that part is to be determined. But we're hopeful. So we're going to be as aggressive as we can in that and see if we can show them the benefits. I mean, I think that's really the important part, right? And that's the other reason why we're doing everything by the book. I mean, in terms of our like utility token, in terms of all the legalization that we have and licenses, all that kind of stuff. We do everything by the book so that so that we have credibility, and so that when we do have asks like this, to, for example, ask the Nevada Game Control Board to allow us to use crypto, we hope that they look at us with a positive lens because we are doing everything else right.
Can you run through what your plan looks like if it's been developed at this point with respect to just the typical challenges with this model, being, the order flow, trying to get the liquidity there? You've talked a little bit about it already with market makers, but can you just dig into how you plan on solving that, whether it's from a Nevada point of view more broadly and just overall?
Yeah, so I think the key thing here to understand is that liquidity is the most important piece, right? So having enough liquidity and inventory is critical in order to be able to not be a step below what a traditional bookmaker would offer. So you can only do all these extra things if you already also do what a bookmaker offers. So you can't say, we have a better product, but oh, by the way, you can't find bets for tonight's NBA or tomorrow's NBA Finals game, right? That just doesn't work. They expect that customers are going to expect that everything else is on par, while still, basically, having the new features that we have. So that's super duper important. So we've taken great pains to ensure, from a market making perspective, that there's enough liquidity at all times for all bet types, for all sporting events that we offer. So that's huge. And I think that's the most important thing, because if you do that, then all the other things that you add onto it, like the peer-to-peer, the crypto, the decentralized, bet result submission, those things end up, really being big, delightful moments for the customer. And anything that they would go, well, I don't get blah, blah, blah with Zen Sports, they can't say that. They definitely get all that. So it's important to be whatever anybody else is doing, plus, plus, plus. In other words, whatever anyone else is doing is table stakes. You got to have that. And then anything else you layer on top of that can be your big differentiator and value add.
Have you had the luxury to think about what a successful first year in Nevada might look like? Or are you just head down and you'll get to that later?
Well, what's great is Nevada's the largest, right? So Nevada had about 5.3 billion in handle last year, half of which was on mobile. And of course, that number is continuing to grow and scale. So it's certainly the largest opportunity. And, there's only a handful of mobile products there. I think there's 13 or 14. So we'll be, one of 14 or 15 that are there. And that's no trivial, feat. And so, when you, just kind of do the math, right? 5.3 billion divided by 15 or whatever it might be, that's a lot of handle per operator, and thus a lot of, revenue opportunity. So, just from an opportunity standpoint for us, it's really exciting in terms of the mechanics and execution of that. So, we certainly want to grab as much market share as possible in the first year, and obviously, continuing that after that. We don't have the specific marketing plan in place of what that looks like, and we've got quite a few whiteboard ideas of what we're going to do once we hit the ground running there. One thing in Nevada is you do have to take registrations in person. So we will have a very expanded footprint throughout the state of different locations where people can register to get the Zen Sports app not to get the app, but to sign up for the Zen Sports app after they download it. And so that we can meet that registration requirement. And so that's a critical piece of it is boots on the ground, as many locations as possible. So that's the first thing that we're working on. We're doing some of that right now. We're getting like leases signed with existing sports books to be able to go in there into those sports books and kind of take over their sports book, if you will, and offer registration for Zen Sports throughout the state. And then from there, it's just, a lot of different marketing tactics, and we haven't yet hashed out all of those, but it's definitely about moving as fast as possible for sure.
Are there any areas you're worried about in terms of solving? Obviously, we've talked about, the product, the transfer of funds part, the price of bets even. We've sort of briefly touched around the edges on that. Marketing, there's obviously a lot of things that go into it. Even in-person registration is a barrier that exists for the industry right now. Are there any things that you're thinking through in your mind, at least at this point, pre-launch, that you want to try and solve before you get to market?
Well, look, I mean, we, as I mentioned before, have a very scalable, robust product. We do a lot beyond just the peer-to-peer betting and the crypto piece. We also do actually, offer still the tournament features, as I mentioned before. So, for example, we've started hosting some of our own esports tournaments. We're starting to add a lot more content to our app as well. For those that may not want to bet that day, they can still come into our app and get some value out of it. So I think it's important to continue to, make the product really robust, make it just a place that people want to come to. We are technology folks at heart, right? And that's in our DNA. So it's really important for us to make sure that everything from a product standpoint, beautiful, clean, simple, robust, heading into our expansion to the US. I would say, yeah, marketing is always a challenge. Anytime you're trying to market to consumers, that's something that you really have to think through. We've got some creative kind of ideas that we're going to hopefully launch as part of what we do. But I do think what's interesting is, I guess this is kind of an interesting little nugget. I think that customers are a lot more loyal and sticky to the products that they use more than people, even operators, might believe. So, and we see that with our own product. Like the loyalty and engagement, especially with the crypto piece, is through the roof. So maybe that might just be unique to us because we have the cryptocurrency piece that keeps people coming back. But I think in general, I think that's kind of true industry wide if you treat your customers well and if you have a great product. And then obviously the rewards piece is kind of the icing on the cake. So I think, of course, there's always the challenges of growing and scaling any kind of business. The regulatory piece is just one of those hurdles that you have to get through in order to then grow into a big business. But I think we're really well positioned, just given our existing product, how we think about product, and also, the rewards that we've implemented that are differentiated, and of course our peer-to-peer, which is differentiated, and our loyalty, which is, very, very good. So yeah, I mean, all the typical challenges that any company would face. But as any good entrepreneur would tell you, we're excited to face those challenges. So they're there, but yeah, I mean, we definitely welcome them and embrace them.
It does sound like to me that you are set up for, if you wanted to go more broadly than just a sports betting transaction, let's say, or some gaming transaction. And you talked a bit before about the APIs, and I think in a future world with open API access through different companies and different audiences being engaged, on different platforms, let's say, whether it is, people talk about affiliates or even beyond that to broadcasters, to social media, whatever it might be. What world do you envision? Because I think, just hearing you speak about esports and open APIs and product and technology focused and all these types of things, thinking more broadly beyond Nevada and addressing a bigger audience, it seems like there is a bigger entertainment play here more than just some of the specific transactional nature of gaming.
100% agree. And that actually is our philosophy, and that is our mission, is to change the world of really any kind of gaming and entertainment. And so as you touched on and I touched on, we have built APIs around our payment solution, around our cryptocurrency payment solution. So we have an API, it's called our payments API, that allows any company, not just us, to accept and manage stable coins like Tether, accept and manage Bitcoin, of course, accept and manage our sports token, and so forth. So we really feel excited about that. In fact, we're actually talking to some pretty large enterprise companies right now in the gaming and media and telecom space about integrating our payments API into their solutions. I mean, why are you accepting credit cards when there are stablecoin versions of crypto out there that have a fraction of the fee of credit cards, no settlement time, no chargebacks, and no intermediary getting in the way? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? But it's not really a no-brainer because otherwise the entire world would be doing it. So the reason why that's the case is because, I don't believe there's been the types of products out there to help make it easy for businesses or enterprises to accept cryptocurrencies easily. And we're hoping to do that. So we've built APIs around cryptocurrency payments. We, of course, have integrated those into Zen Sports. And we are now talking about broader applications of that to other large businesses in those industries. And then you talk about esports, and totally agree with you there that there's big opportunities. Up to this point, I think esports has been very kind of an immature market. I mean, obviously there's professional teams, leagues, tournaments, etc. But I think from a broadcasting perspective, it's basically Twitch and nothing else. I also think on the betting side, it's still a very, very immature market. And what I mean by that is you know, let's say you want to bet on a Dota 2 match or something like that, and the match starts at 2 o'clock. Well, sometimes the tournament will start an hour or two early, just because everyone's ready to go or whatever other reason. It's like, no, you can't do that. If you've got people betting on it, you got to start at the time you say you're going to start. I mean, you can start later, that's okay, but you can't start early. People are trying to bet on it. And so things like that, you don't get that with the NBA or the NFL or, Bundesliga, stuff like that, right? Because they recognize all the moving pieces, the broadcast, the betting, et cetera. And esports isn't there yet. So we're hoping to kind of bring some of that. We're hosting our own esports tournaments, which you can bet on. We, of course, offer esports betting. We have about 6 different leagues right now for betting, CSGO, League of Legends, Overwatch, Dota 2, FIFA, and Rainbow Six Siege, and we're going to be adding some more later. It's definitely an immature market right now, but the opportunity is, again, huge. And so we hope we can facilitate a lot of that, both with our betting and hosting of tournaments in our app.
Is there an element of this that you need, like a rising tide will lift, all the boats? And when I say boats, I mean companies like Coinbase, and we talked about Augur before, and even Cash App and other payment methods. It becomes more ubiquitous that you see more than just fiat included there. Is there some of that if the overall ecosystem and aspects of the ecosystem that directly relate specifically to Zen Sports, there will be that massive rise at some point?
Well, look, I think the regulatory piece is huge, right? So the legalization here in the U.S. is not a trivial matter. I mean, that was a huge rising tide that lifted a lot of boats in the industry. Now, obviously, the rest of the world has had legalized sports betting for quite some time, but even some other countries that have not had legalized sports betting are starting to go, whoa, there's a big tax and other financial economic opportunity here. We need to get on this train. So the taboo nature that sports betting has kind of always had, especially in this country, in the U.S., is starting to go away, which is awesome, as it should have probably a long time ago, but better late than never. And so I think that's a big, big, big rising tide, because without that, you can't do anything, right? Now, I think it could be taken a step further, and specifically here in the U.S., be legalized at the federal level, because PASPA, when that was struck down, did not legalize it at the federal level, despite what some people think. That just told states that they can go legalize it, which, of course, like about 20 states have, and then each state has come up with their own licensing process, and that's just a pain. So that would be like the next evolution on the regulatory side of things. So that's one piece. Obviously, I think, just, of course, the fact that everyone nowadays has smartphones and the proliferation of smartphone technology, the fact that you can bet from your phone anywhere on the go is critical, and that's why we are actually a mobile app only product. We will build a web product at some point, but that'll probably come next year. So I think those two things are big. I think also maybe the last kind of piece is on the in-game betting side. So just real time, low latency, or no latency, I should say, transfer of data, right? Because the last thing you want is somebody who's at the game can basically see something before somebody that's watching it on TV, and you need to reduce that latency. So similar to equity trading exchanges, right? And how, fiber optic cables, and I'm not an expert in that area at all, but, those have basically eliminated the lag time down to milliseconds, right? So that people can get their trade in on time and before anyone else. That's what you need to see as well. I think that's kind of the final piece of that as well, too.
Yeah, definitely. And one last topic I want to get your thoughts on is just the crypto and the blockchain and gambling space in the US at the moment, because I'm sure there's people who will probably listen to this who'll think that, you're 25 years ahead of your time, Mark, and you're crazy. I'm happy to do what I'm doing now, and you're miles away. And others might say, no, this is actually the now, and it's happening already. And if you don't think that, you're too late. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle, who knows? But what's the industry like, the space like? Are you one of 6 or 7 people doing this, or are there plenty of brethren out there who are attacking this area, this industry, and you will expect that it'll be one of the hottest things in the next decade?
I expect it to be one of the hottest things in the next decade because of the legalization and the removal of the taboo status, especially in the U.S. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, they don't want Big Brother telling them what they can and cannot do. If they want to bet on sports, they're going to bet on sports, and they want to bet on sports, and it's very clear that they do. And they find it ridiculous that the government's telling them they can't. It's a accepted worldwide activity. There's nothing nefarious about it. Yes, it does obviously have its roots, in some of the mafia, days back in the 1950s and 60s, which is the reason why the Wire Act even came about in the U.S. is because of, mob-related, sports betting. But those days are long, long, long gone. And it's legalized. If other forms of gaming can be legalized, like casinos and lotteries and stuff like that, the fact that sports betting cannot be legalized is just absolute utter nonsense. In fact, you could make a very, very strong argument, which I've blogged about before, that sports betting is skill based. I mean, it's skill based. It's just as skill based as daily fantasy sports is. It's just as skill based as trading securities or equities or cryptocurrencies are. And so there's no reason at all that it shouldn't be legalized. And so you're going to see very, very fast movement for the rest of the legalization. However, that being said, it doesn't mean there are 1,000 startups or people looking to build this product. It's a very difficult product to build, as you noted, and you asked about at the beginning. Wow, how did you guys build it on such limited resources? And it's just because we just, again, like I said, worked our ass off. It is a very difficult product to build. So there's a lot of IP around the actual product. And quite frankly, by the time anybody else tries to build what we've built, we'll be 24 months ahead of them. So we feel like there's a competitive advantage in that too. Now, of course, there's existing incumbents and products like DraftKings and FanDuel and William Hill, et cetera, that have products ready to go and are growing and scaling and going into all the new markets and states, et cetera. But again, we feel our product is differentiated, and so there's a big opportunity for us to become a very big company and do things in a unique way that we feel customers want. So I think when you put all those things together, I think we Zen Sports are positioned really well, and I think consumers are going to be in for a treat and are going to be delighted at what comes about from a product perspective as well as a legalization perspective.
What do you tell people who reach out to you who might enjoy crypto, who enjoy betting and gaming, whether it's sports betting or other forms of gaming? Is there a way into this industry? Is there a path for them, or are they going to have to look at other opportunities and go in sideways?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I encourage everyone to live out their dreams if they're looking to build any kind of company, even if that means that they're going to be competitive to us. I, by all means, encourage them to do what they feel is best. But like I said a minute ago, it is a very, very rigorous path from a product and technology standpoint to build, like, for example, like what we built. And I mean, again, not to badmouth some of the other kind of quote unquote crypto projects, but when you just stack up the products side by side, we really don't believe anybody can hold a candle to us. And I think that is because we have taken the time to really nail down that product experience. And it's not perfect by any stretch. I mean, we've got a lot of things that we work on, but we do like bi-weekly sprint cycles and release new features and iterations and bug fixes every couple of weeks. We're an agile company. We move quickly, to build out things. So I think from that standpoint, it's not like building a chat app, right? If you want to build a clone of WhatsApp, you can probably do that in about a month. Even a clone of Twitter, you can probably do that in 2 months. But building out it's just got so many moving pieces. It's tough. So look, I would say, and this is something I've learned. This is my fourth technology company, and I've obviously learned a lot over the last 12 years. I think it's really important because I've built products that already have a lot of competition in them in the past. I think it's really important to look at the competition when you're first looking to build something and say, hey, can we get to a 10x better product than they have in 12 months time? And can we get to some reasonable but some reasonable product market fit within 24 months time? If I can, then you should do it. If you can't, then you probably want to look at doing something else. And we felt for sure that we could. And this was back in May 2018, and we certainly have done so. So I think those are the questions you should ask yourself if you're looking to build something in a space like this, or in any space. Is what does the competition look like? How quickly can we get a product to market? How quickly can we get product market fit? And if we can't do that in that 12 and 24 month timeline, respectively, that I just mentioned, I think it's probably best to look at a different industry.
So just finally, before I let you go, tell me what the experience is for those who want to download the app now, depending on where they are, whether they're in Nevada, New Jersey, or Africa. And how can they follow along? Is Twitter the best way? Obviously, your podcast, what you're doing, your blog is a great resource for people to be directed to. But just tell me those two items.
Yeah, so we are a mobile app only, so you can download our app from the App Store if you're on iOS. Google does not allow gambling apps to be in the Play Store. So if you're on Android, you'll need to download our Android app from our website, and our website's zensports.com. And if you're searching for the app in the App Store, it's just Zen Sports, all one word. Yep, our blog is awesome. We have really beefed that up and provided a lot of amazing content over the past couple of months. So you can just go to zensports.com/blog for that. And I really encourage everyone to join our Telegram group. I think that's a great way to chat. Obviously, Twitter's great. We're at Zen Sports. Very easy to find us on Twitter. But Telegram is the Zen Sports. So for those that want to chat with us in our Telegram group, I think that's a great place as well. So yeah, I think, on the content side, we're producing a lot of cool content, and obviously we make it easy to download the app. So people can download it from our website or from the App Store.
Great, Mark. I very much appreciate your time. There's been a lot of consolidation in Nevada over the last 6 to 12 months and people talking about that. It's nice to talk about the evolution of Nevada and sports betting and gaming there, and you're certainly on that list. So I do wish you well, and hopefully you can get out there and start betting on the app. Thanks again for your time and coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Jake, for having me. Appreciate it.